Good afternoon to you, snooker fans, and welcome to this latest episode of the 15 Red podcast with me, Scott McCarter, here in County Tyrone. After a marvellous week in the Jian Grand Prix in China, well done to Mark Williams. And with that, I will say good afternoon to my co host, Kelly Barker. What a man Williams is, Kelly.
Good afternoon, Scott. I think we've over the years we've run out of good words to say about Mark and all the class of '92 really. But this week was the Welshman's week once more for his 27th ranking title, and he couldn't have played much better in the final. He was fantastic. Going into it, I thought it would be Sean's day because he played so well in the semis and leading up to it earlier in the week. But well played, Mark Williams, and 27th ranking title, and at age 50 becomes the oldest ever winner after Ray Reardon won one. So absolutely fantastic.
Yes, Ray Reardon beat Jimmy White in the professional players tournament 43 years ago in 1982. That was and that'll mean something to Mark too. Because he knew Ray very well. Obviously, another Welsh great. So it'll mean something to Mark. I know Mark Williams is about the most laid back human being on the planet, but it will mean something to him. And, as you say, everybody expected that Sean would have a bit of a walkover, but clearly not.
Oh, it's just fantastic to watch, and the way he keeps carrying on at this age. I think to have won ranking titles in his 20s, 30s, 40s, and now one at age 50. Um, Absolutely incredible. Like I say, I can't think of more good words to say that except that we are just blessed to be able to watch these guys, and Mark's been one of my very favourite players since he burst onto the scene. I've always loved his laid back style and you know the way he plays the game and doesn't take it seems to not take it all too seriously when he loses. But there's a fierce competitor in there, and to see him still winning now, absolutely wonderful.
Yes, well, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but as people know, I'm going to Belfast for the semi-final of the Northern Ireland in a few days' time. And the last time I was there was the final in 2017, which Mark Williams won the decider. Then he wins the German Masters, and then he won the world title. So, you know, he is just the most extraordinary player. On the final in GN itself, and we'll get to it, I know, in more detail, but I think what he did and what he's done so successfully over the years, he's great. Obviously he's a great scorer, as we know, but he's great when the frame gets a bit bitty, as John Parrott would say, gets a bit bogged down. And that's just what he did to Sean. He sort of neutered Sean's extraordinary scoring that he's been doing all week.
Yeah, I mean, a word for Sean as well. He got blitzed today 10-3 in this final, but all week he played so well again. We will go through from the quarters onwards and a bit before as well. And he was the man of the week again, especially after winning the British Open recently. But today just wasn't his day. He wasn't allowed to really get much going, I thought. I thought Mark started well. And then when he stole, I think for me, the big part was when he led 4-0, but he stole at least one. And Sean would have felt he could have won one or two of those frames at least, I think. And at 4-0 against Mark in the form he'd started showing, it was always going to be quite a long way back from there. But another good week for the magician as well, and which puts him into gives him a place in the Riyadh season Golden Ball event as well. So it's a very lucrative, if disappointing end to the week for Sean. But with the British Open as well, many good positives to come out of it for both of them, really.
Yes, very much so. I mean, we'll get on to one performance by Sean specifically, but dear me, as Alan McManus has said many times in commentary this week, I've never actually seen him strike the ball any better. It's not just that, he's playing well, it's sort of the technique's absolutely perfect, the mannerisms around the table, the pace of play. It's just, you know, I was saying to my father actually this morning when uh, or yesterday it was, I was saying to him that it's rather reminiscent of 20 years ago when he won the world title, the form he's showing at the minute.
I think hands down he's a better player all round since then. I mean, I think 20 years ago he had the attacking flair that he sort of rammed his way to the world title, which was fantastic to watch. But he didn't have the all round game that he has now. Still reluctant to use it sometimes, I think. But yeah, again with Peter Ebdon in his corner, you know, I think there's a lot more rounded off to his game now. Sean's been one who's always had those rough edges and didn't really have the consistency. But as we said in the last episode with Peter Ebdon, they've smoothed everything off, I think, and made Sean an even better player. And I think if he keeps this form up, I think I can see him winning more this season. But you can also see Mark winning more if he carries on how he is as well. So just fantastic. But anyway, if we go through the event, and this was an interesting week, Scott, from the word go, because on day one of the tournament, we had two 147s from Judd Trump and Aaron Hill. So yeah, I mean, there's the big debate: are the pockets too big, or is the standard just better? I think the standard is a bit better, but I do think the cloth plays a little more scoring friendly, shall we say. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I mentioned to you when we were sort of messaging through the week, yes, the standard has got better, but I think the standard has got better very much lower down the rankings. There are more players capable of firing in centuries nowadays than there would have been because, back in Davis or particularly Henry's day, if Henry had made 4 or 5 centuries in a match, you wouldn't have been surprised. But if somebody else had done it, you'd have thought this was a revelation. But now it's more commonplace. Yes, there may be something in the fact that the cloth plays a little more generously, but I'm not one of these. You see these Philistines on social media essentially who say that we should go back to heavier balls and thicker cloths and more nap and that sort of nonsense. But you know, sport is an entertainment business, and you know, people like to see heavy scoring. Now, you and I are purists, so we like sort of 45-minute tactical drills as well. But if you want to attract casual fans, you've got to make it scoring friendly.
Well, I think it's just the fact that sport evolves, and that's, whether it's snooker, football, whatever, and life. As the years go on, technology and everything gets better. And I think it's just the fact that the cloths, they are made better these days. And, I mean, I sort of got into snooker in the early 90s as Henry was coming into his pomp. And but if I'd have been 10 years older and getting into snooker in 1981, 82, would would Eddie Charlton v Cliff Thorburn every week, would that have attracted me to the sport as much with 30, 40-minute frames every single time? So, I think there is the idea that the sport have evolved and it's a lot more professional nowadays. Like you say, even players who aren't even on the tour, they're good players. We only have to see the standard they produce in the Q Tour, which we'll come on to later. It's just better all round these days, and I think it is a bit of a freaky thing that's happened this season, that we've had so many 147s to start the season. But bring it on, I say. It's fantastic to watch. But we move on to what happened on those early days of the tournament. And Judd Trump, for all that he played well to make 147 in the first round, he then lost 5-4 to Matthew Stevens in round two. And he didn't play especially well. And we have to ask, is this a cause for concern for Judd? Because he hasn't really started the season too well. I actually think that he's lost to better players on the day, which is entirely possible. But I think against Matthew, this was the first time I really thought, oh, he hasn't really played so well there.
Yes, look, of course, no matter what he says, these things are bound to build up in your mind. That, people are talking about you, and we're talking about it, and another podcast are talking about the fact that Trump hasn't had as good a start to the season as he's been used to historically in recent years. I think that's the difference. It's not necessarily that he's playing badly, obviously, he made a maximum, but it's just, given the level of success that he's become accustomed to in recent years, it looks suboptimal, shall we say.
I totally agree. There's many good players who haven't won a tournament yet, but we're not necessarily saying they haven't had a good season. It's just that George, he seems to win one in every 3 or 4 events. So this is quite a drought for him. But like I say, apart from the match against Matthew, I thought he's been playing well this season, and he's just run up against opponents who've played that bit better. But I did think he was below par against Matthew. Another player who's having a bit of a difficult time is Zhao Xintong, the world champion. He hasn't won 2 matches in a row in ranking events since Sheffield. And Robert Milkins beat him 5-2 this time in a morale boosting win for him as he aims to stay on tour. This was a really good match and a good win for Robert Scott.
We very much so, yeah. I suppose you don't want to bring up old things again, but you know the I- you know the debate probably will start again. Should he have been given the ranking points? But I don't want to go into that. But some people will think, you know, was is one good tournament now basically protecting him when he should be further down because he's not playing very well. I think, to be honest, it's just the pressure of being world champion. The fact he was the first from China, the fact that he's basically an international superstar overnight, and he's only in his 20s, so he's not going to completely uh, be at home with that at once. And I think, you know, to some extent, we're a bit guilty of saying, oh, the minute he won the world title, oh, we can have a great season next season because, you know, it's unpredictable.
Yeah, yes, I do take your point there, Scott, definitely. Nobody is going to play that well all the time, and he did hit the best form possible in Sheffield. But again, he wasn't truly tested, you could say. He ran away with the matches. But I don't think that takes away anything from him being world champion because he's such a great player and he started well at the Shanghai Masters. where he lost in the semis there, but it hasn't quite gone to plan for him so far. But moving on, and the last 16, we had Ronnie. We had Ronnie back and looking good. He walloped Maguire 5-0. But in the last 16, the main standout of the round was Sean Murphy thrashing the defending champion Kyron 5-0. Kyron didn't pot a ball as Sean made two total clearances, including a 140 and a 141, sorry, and three other 70 plus breaks. It was absolutely sensational, God.
Yeah. 533 points without reply, except for a foul at the very end. So quite
Absolutely.
extraordinary. 23 short of the record. Uh, uh, 556 by O'Sullivan in the Masters in 2014 against Ricky Walton. But
Incredible.
extraordinary scoring. And, you know, is it possible to play any better than that in the best of nine? I suppose, if you're being picky, O'Sullivan did make 5 centuries in Northern Ireland in 2007. But apart from that, uh, you know, there's not much you can do.
Absolutely not. And I heard in commentary that Kyron possibly only had 9 shots in the whole match of that game, which is just, you can't imagine it really. And at least two of those would have been the breakoffs. So that just shows how well Sean played. And even he said in his interview after, it was probably the best he's ever played, especially against a top opponent in a big tournament. I think we'll want to watch that back sometime because it was just so good. And watching total clearances, I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. And Sean was the very much the man of the week by the time we got to the quarterfinals, and he was the one we were thinking then, cool, surely it's his to lose now because he was just playing so well. But onto the quarters we go, and first up was Mark Williams against Liu Haoshan, and Mark won this 5-4 in the decider. It was a match that could have gone either way. Not a lot in it from the start to finish, but Willow got over the line in the decider. Like I say, could have gone either way. I didn't think either were at the very best, and I think Luke would feel that's a bit of a missed opportunity because, I think the chance was there for the taking against Mark that day. But when it came to the decider, Mark showed his experience and ring craft and won that frame to move on to the semis.
Yeah, old Welsh grit coming through again from Williams, I think. Yes, I mean, we'll get on to the latter stages in a moment, but in terms of standard, Williams definitely wasn't the player of the week. But I know we've just said sports about entertainment in relation to are the pockets playing well, but from a playing point of view, as long as you get the W, as Stephen Hendry calls it, that's all that matters.
Absolutely, and Mark will take that kind of match every day of the week and twice on Sundays if he gets the W. And it was the draw was starting to open up for him as well in that section because the other quarter final in that half was Daniel Wells beat Liam Pullen 5-2, and Wells reached the Xi'an semi-finals for the second year running, beating Liam 5-2. Pullen's had a very good week, notably beating Noppom Sangam 5-0 along the way. But from 2-all at the interval, the Welshman was the better player and was slightly stronger once he'd got his nose in front. So Daniel Wells moved through to the semis to play Mark Williams, but encouraging signs for Liam Pullen, who's, this was a bit of a milestone week for him, reaching the last 8 for the first time.
Very much so. It's good to see, I know we're speaking to fans all over the world, but it is encouraging to see a bit of homegrown British talent. We've seen Stan Moody improving, Liam Pullum's got to a quarter final there. So encouraging signs for younger players.
Definitely. And I think Liam, he played really well. The match against Noppon I watched on the stream, I think. Um, or one of his earlier matches anyway, and he really did play very well. And he's improving a lot. And along with Stan, they really could be the future of the next generation to come through. I think I like the look of Jackson Page as well. I know he's been around a bit longer, but he's still young. Um, but yeah, very good week for Liam. So I was pleased to see him get through. But on to the other quarterfinals of the evening session, and Gary Wilson beat Ronnie 5-2. Now, Ronnie had been playing well this week. It was good to see him back. But he ran into a Gary Wilson in the last eight, playing some tremendous snooker. Wilson led 3-0 and eventually ran out a 5-2 winner with 2 centuries and 270 pluses to thoroughly deserve his semi-final spot. And well done, Gary.
Very much so. I always remember Dave Hampton saying at Championship League that, he'd been talking to Gary during the Championship League, and Gary was sort of down on himself, as Gary often is. And, he was sort of saying that he would give snooker maybe a year or two. But, his final in Wuhan, um, semi-finals here, beating O'Sullivan in the quarter final, because O'Sullivan was below par, despite the fact that he came back from 3-0 to 3-2. But there was only one winner of that game in the end up. So well done, Gary, and hopefully onwards and upwards for him.
Absolutely. I really hope to see him do well because he's a tremendous player, and I know he's hard on himself, but he really shouldn't be questioning whether snooker's the game for him or moving on to something else because he'd
Well,
be a loss
well,
to the game.
sorry, Kelly, I just remembered. In the International Championship qualifiers, he's joined a rather exclusive club. He became the 10th player to make six or more 147s in his career. So, he was clearly playing very well.
Absolutely, yes. So there's been a lot of snooker played recently, and just before Xi'an, we had those qualifiers, as you say, and yes, he made a 147. So all is going in the right direction for him because last season was a bit of a write-off, to be honest. But already this season, as you say, he's had a final in Wuhan and a semi-final now, and the sky's the limit for him, really. So yeah, it's good to see him back. And so, who would he play in the semi-finals? It would be Sean Murphy or Ding, and Murphy beat Ding 5-3. Sean was always ahead in this one and always looked the likely winner, especially at 4-1 up. Ding did rally to only trail 4-3 though, but a clash with Gary in the last four came for him. He didn't play as well as he did against Kyron, but that would have been nigh on impossible, really. But he did enough to beat Ding 5-3 and upset the home fans somewhat.
Well, I suppose the only way he could have improved on his standard against Kyger would be maximum breaks in all five frees, but that's not going to happen.
Well, we know the standard's getting better all the time, Scott, but one day, probably long after we're not here anymore, that might happen. We'll see.
No, but as you say, very, very good, very solid performance against Sean. I think obviously a lot of the headlines up until then had been the 533 unanswered points, but he was actually playing very solidly in the sense that, as you say, Ding did come back and applied a bit of pressure, but Sean still had the bottle to stand up to him.
He did, and when he got his chance in that eighth frame, he took it well. And yeah, I think Ding would have probably ended up disappointed a bit, but it was the start he got really. And I think really, if Sean had kept his top form up, he would have been the one to win easier than he did, really, because he still looks very good. So yeah, that brought us up to the semi-finals, and it was two very contrasting matches, Scott. One, Mark Williams beat Daniel Wells 6-3, and it was mostly a slow, sort of bogged down affair to 3-all. Took a long time to really get going, but Willow got stronger and pulled away to the finishing line to win 6-3 in the end for his 44th career ranking final at the age of 50. But a very encouraging week for Wells, though, who reached the semis here for the second year running. So he obviously likes going to Xi'an because he's done very well for 2 years in a row now.
Yes, as you say, a bit of a slog over the breakfast in the UK for us watching, but no, it's the sort of match that Williams is very good at winning, isn't it?
Absolutely, and like the match with Liu Haoxian, this was a bit worse than that, to be honest. It wasn't. It didn't really make great breakfast viewing, I didn't think. But but he did get better from 3-all. I thought Daniel, if anything, tried to make it a bit too cagey and slow it down. But I think Mark is such a great player from any position that you really have to have. Nobody has more ring craft than Mark Williams these days, and I think Daniel would have been best playing snooker and to really go for it instead of maybe trying to shut up shop too early. So, but lessons learned there, I'm sure, and it was a good week for him. I think he goes home with about £34,000. So that's very, very encouraging week and good for the ranking points as well. So that was Mark reaching the final, and the other semi-final was a bit of a contrast to that. Shaun Murphy beating Gary Wilson 6-4. Wilson played very well in this one to lead 3-1 at the interval and give himself a great chance. But the Murphy we saw against Kyron Wilson earlier in the week suddenly sprung to life, making 3 total clearances, which included a 140 and a 141, to power into the final. This was tremendous standard again, Scott.
Yes, I mean, what is it? Sean is just playing absolutely superb at this point. To be honest, I thought, when he started playing as well as that, I thought, here we go again. Whoever gets in the final will have no chance. But obviously, we'll come to that in a moment. But dear me, absolutely extraordinary. And of course, could have had a maximum at one
Yeah,
stage, but missed the 11th black. Uh, uh,
yes, wasn't quite to be, but he's had I think that was three 140 pluses in the tournament at least, and he's although as we know now that he didn't quite go to plan in the final. Mark was tremendous, but very, very, very good from Shaun. And if he can carry on like he is, he'll definitely be winning other trophies this season, I think. Because that was just absolutely, and he's stunning. He's so good to watch as well when he's playing like that, scoring power. Um, yeah,
I
but
mean, also, we should say Gary played very well as well. He had a 139 at one stage, so he was absolutely tremendous as well. So, a very good best of 11 that.
yes, it was very enjoyable. I really, yeah, both played well. And on another day, Gary would have won that match if he hadn't have come up against a Murphy in quite the form he's in at the moment. But yeah, a good week overall, and I think he'll go away and. Although we know Gary can get a bit down on himself, he should take the positives from this because to beat Ronnie in any tournament, and he only lost to Shaun playing this well. Very positive, but that gave us a tremendous final to look forward to. Mark Williams against Shaun Murphy, and it's just finished about an hour or so ago, and Mark was just incredible today, Scott, winning 10-3. I don't think any of us quite saw this coming.
David, well, I certainly didn't. You think it's 7-1, which it was after the first set. You sort of thought, well, it's over. Now, to be fair, Sean did make a bit of a comeback in the afternoon hour time night in China, but there was never any doubt about the outcome whenever you go in with a 7-1 lead. But no, I think the key frame for me was frame six that lasted 40 minutes because, while Sean was never really allowed to score at all, there is a there is something about losing 40 odd minute frames that does something to you psychologically.
Definitely. And I think because I mean Mark will stand out there all day and win 40-minute frames. He's got the guile, he's got everything you need to just hold the concentration. And at that stage, by frame six, Sean was well down. He knew Mark was scoring well when he had the chances. If he could have won that 40-minute frame, it could have maybe turned the tide a bit. But for me, when Mark won it to go 5-1, I don't think we could see a way back for Sean then, unfortunately for him. And Mark won the final frame of the session. He won with a century, and two centuries in the final, and a barrage of 50 plus breaks. To be fair to Sean, not many would have stopped Mark today. He was in top nick.
Yes, yeah. And I think, at this stage of Mark's career, anyone is sort of satisfactory, but also the fact that he's beaten the man who, by common consent, has been the form man for the last, what, 2 or 3 weeks or so, although he won't say it because he sort of is so laid back, that will give him a little bit of satisfaction, I think, to know that, Sean might have had a purple patch, but I'd put an end to it, at least in terms of winning the tournament.
Absolutely. I think Mark often plays down his own achievements, but he should really be proud of this one. Beat, who has been the best player in the world the last few weeks. And to still be doing it age 50, it's just incredible. I mean, we can sit here and go on and on about it, but it's just amazing. And I know you're off to the next tournament, Scott, the Northern Ireland, and I would have every thought that you'll be seeing either Sean or Mark, maybe both of them there, because they're both playing really well at the moment.
Yes, thanks for that, Kelly. Lord willing, I will be in Belfast on the 25th of this month. And yes, well, it's always a tremendous tournament for us anyway, because it uh, it gets mentioned in the sports bulletins, but it'll be nice to be there in person and to sample the atmosphere of a live tournament again. I think what I'm thinking at the moment is I'll have to remind myself how big a table is when you actually see it in person.
Absolutely. I mean, I've been playing a bit of snooker in recent times, and when the white is near the top cushion and the red is near the other end of the table, you think, blimey, how do they do it? How do they pop them with such amazing regularity? It's such a difficult game to master.
I
But
know.
yeah, so that was Gian. And so, yeah, well done, Mark Williams. Couple of things before we go. And we must mention that it was 19 years this week, Scott, since we sadly lost Paul Hunter. Um, what a player he was. I know he was probably almost his best years were before your time. I don't know how much you remember of him, but what a young legend. And he's never forgotten in the snooker world. And yeah, he would have gone on to even more great things. But we never forget those three Masters he won.
No, I know. One of them against Mark Williams, of course, in 2002. Uh,
Yeah,
but yes, as you say, like all those Masters ones were long before I was well, I was alive, but it was long before I was sort of conscious of snooker or anything of that nature. So, but as you know, I'm a great student of the game's history, so I have watched them many times. And yes, what a player he was! Particularly that 2004 Masters final. That 5 centuries against O'Sullivan from 7-2 down at Wembley in front of an Essex crowd.
it was
Extraordinary.
it was wonderful, and he always kept sort of doing this at the Masters every year. It was just tremendous, and he was such a nice guy as well. He would stand there all day if there was a crowd waiting for autographs, and he had time for everyone. And who's to say if he would have been world champion or not? But I certainly think he would have done a lot more in the game over these years, and he would still be in the rankings now, I'm sure, because he was such a lovely guy, but a really great player and top competitor. So yes, we always remember Paul.
Yes, and a terrible loss, first and foremost, to his family, of course. But it was it was pretty awful what happened. I think we've all seen those images of him playing Neil Roberts at Crucible in 2006, and without being too sorrowful or painful about it, but it did look awful. But as you say, what a player he was, and you know, still
Absolutely.
sadly must nearly 2 decades after he's left us, sadly.
Yes, he'll never be forgotten by the snooker fans, or he left a daughter behind, so I'm sure she'll always grow up with not really any memories, sadly, but she'll always know who her dad was, and yeah, so always good to remember Paul Hunter at this time of year.
Yes.
And just quickly before we go, there was another Q Tour event this weekend in Albania, and which Simon Blackwell won. He beat Mark Joyce in the final. And so he gets a place in the UK Championship qualifiers now. So excellent for him.
Yes, bit of a frog in your throat there, my friend, but
Yes, I felt it coming up as I was talking.
yeah. Ah, well. Mind, yes, that's everything for now. Well done to Simon Blackwell, of course, and the qualifiers for York. Hopefully he makes it, but anyway, I'm off to begin to prepare for Belfast next week. It'll be very good, and hopefully we'll be back shortly after it finishes.
Yes, you can tell us all about it, Scott. So we'll look forward
Right,
to that, and we'll see you soon.
right, oh everyone, bye.
Bye.